Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we are back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Let's hop in. So, first things first, I think since we're playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, the most important bit of news here is that the creator of Yu-Gi-Oh! Kazuki Takahashi has died. Here's their notice. We are shocked and saddened by the sudden passing of Mr. Kazuki Takahashi. Which whenever they put a Mr. in front of it, I don't know how you would actually say that in Japanese. Would you call it Kazuki-san or would you call it Takahashi-san? You're not supposed to use the first name, but then I'm not sure which one's actually the first name because they sometimes are backwards. We are deeply grateful for the wonderful Yu-Gi-Oh! Universe that he has created, and our thoughts are with his friends and family at this difficult time. Together with his countless fans, we pledge to carry on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy with all the love and care it deserves. Konami Digital Entertainment. And they sign it. Okay. Which, it would have been a little weird to sign it Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel team or something like that. So, what he died from, I don't know. And I don't know much about him at all, frankly. So, I mean, it will have some impact, but maybe not that much impact after all, because it's very possible that the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga that he created, which originally was actually very different, and they rebooted it to focus on specifically the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game instead of the original manga, which was much darker and had the different game pretty much every arc, every chapter. Yeah, the general conceit of the original manga was that the Yumi Yugi was going to just be a savant at all kinds of games, and there would be all kinds of games happening. And certainly he didn't create the nonsense of the Shadow Realm versus people really dying. But yeah, if the manga is still going on in any form or factor, it's questionable whether he was actually working on it. He was on only 60, which is relatively young for a Japanese person, but it's not that young for somebody to die from anything. So yeah, I could see the manga continuing because there was somebody else writing it or a team working on it. I can definitely see the card game continuing no matter what, because it's pretty easy to make more cards. I actually heard that the Magic the Gathering creator at one time tried to make a competitor to Magic the Gathering because he was just no longer involved. So yeah, that goes to show in some small way that you can just always make more cards. So I'm not expecting anything to happen anytime soon. I'm not sure if there's a Yu-Gi-Oh! Cartoon anime happening or has happened anytime recently. I don't even know if there really needs to be another Yu-Gi-Oh! Cartoon. You could probably wait 5 to 10 years after the last Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime series launched and come out on the 10-year anniversary after that to release a new anime and release new cards. It really just comes down to whether they think it would sell more cards or not, whether there would be any more anime. Now, unfortunately, in the past couple days, a lot has happened. So, very quickly, even amongst the Japanese people, I think they're going to quickly forget about the creator of Yu-Gi-Oh! Dying because the former Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, has been assassinated by what seems to be a lone gunman who created his own handmade like shotgun, handgun type device, make it using black powder is what I'm hearing. And that potentially he was planning on making a black powder bomb, and then went with the shotgun approach. Now, the Japanese, I will say, are not particularly political as much as they probably should be in good, healthy ways, in my opinion. And so I don't know how many young people, young adults, or even people under 60 actually even bother to vote in Japan. Shinzo Abe has had his Abe economic policy go for decades, and it is, from what I heard, been very poorly received as far as how it economically impacted Japan. So I wouldn't be surprised if that is in part the reason why, after being the prime minister, even though he's seemingly still in the politics, that he was targeted, just because he just wasn't a particularly good prime minister. He was embroiled in some scandals, but the Japanese just don't talk about it. So when you're in a society where you can't vote the bum out, and then, or if you hate a politician, then you're in a society where you can't vote the bum out because there's just not enough passion to change course, because the Japanese just grin and bear it. That's the Japanese way. I imagine that can encourage lone actors a little bit more. Whereas in the United States, there's always the pretense of you can vote people out, depending on really whether that happens or not. And that tends to keep the United States lone actors not targeting politicians. Plus, politicians in the United States have way more security, where Shinzo Abe probably had relatively few security guards because it was Japan, and Japan, in people's minds, don't have guns. It is definitely an argument, a win in the favor of you can't get rid of all guns everywhere, and people that make that argument. However, that isn't really a valid argument to say, well, we could certainly reduce it. This assassin is not a 10-year-old kid finding a gun in their parents' bedroom, nor is it a teenager, an angsty teenager, being able to buy a gun at a store. This person had to go and buy black powder and do the research and really do the work and be really, really committed to his path. I also believe, and I could be wrong about that Shinzo Abe is a member of a group, which a lot of Japanese politicians are, where they actively are trying to deny and erase history as far as the actions of Japan in World War II. This is the core reason why Korea is absolutely livid with and hates Japan, is that there are constant claims that, oh, we've already apologized for that, when at least the Koreans feel like they never apologized for it. And there definitely are people that are just trying to erase history, and I can kind of understand that. But if we understand post-Nazi Germany a lot better in the West, and if post-Nazi Germany was allowed to just censor out every picture of Hitler and every piece of history of everything they did wrong under Nazi regime, then the chances that the Nazism would have risen again would be fairly high. And I do think there is a higher chance of a World War II Japan fascist government to rise to power again than there is for a Nazi government or fascist government to rise in Germany because of that. But yeah, in a lot of ways, you can also only apologize so much, or say, or explain yourself so much. So yeah, a lot of that sounds like blaming the victim, but really all I'm trying to do is give some context as to why somebody would do that, because I imagine most people in the West go, oh, Shinzo Abe is just this nice old former prime minister of Japan. Why would anybody want to do that? Because most people wouldn't follow the intricacies of Japanese politics. Part of the reason why he was so easily assassinated is that Japanese politicians tend not to be up on stages. They tend to be very close to people, directly shaking hands of people. There's not a lot of police or barriers around, and I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see that change, and there is going to be a lot more security around politicians. And certainly I don't personally know enough, as I probably should, as far as Japanese politics, because the current prime minister, I don't think has really done anything special or new, and if anything, he's probably just honoring Abe's lead, and now there is potentially this argument that he will do that even more and decide to continue Abenomics, or following Abe's lead. I think it is almost certainly a lesser story to say Boris Johnson, after many scandals and everybody hating him, has announced his resignation, yet he's refusing to actually leave the position, leave the number 10 Downing Street, until the Tory party selects a new leader, which is not going to particularly happen like in a matter of days. So like it's like he gave in, he gave his 2 months, 2 weeks notice, but there's nobody to potentially refuse that 2 weeks offer and just say, no, we want you out now, even though it definitely seems like that's what most people want. Particularly in British politics, it's still going to be a Tory party person, leader, so the actual actions and goals I don't think are going to change much. So they almost certainly are just going to stay the course and continue struggling to make some kind of plan towards Brexit. So yeah, politically it's been kind of a busy couple days. And then Yu-Gi-Oh's creator, I don't think he had anything really too much to do with politics. So video game wise, it's been a couple busy days. Meanwhile, for my accountability section, yeah, I am waking up a little bit later, which means I'm streaming a little bit later on this Friday, and am putting in the time to play Wolfenstein: The Old Blood, which I still have yet to see zombies. I'm about to start the 4th chapter of the game, and there's just like no zombies in the game, and it really is implying what's going to happen is that BJ Blazkowicz is just going to hallucinate zombies in a very small section of the game, and that's going to be that. Also, BJ Blazkowicz has far too broad of a chest in the way he's being depicted. I'm kind of struggling with the game though, and I just don't think the level design for a game that's trying to pretend like it is stealth or has a lot of stealth sections, there definitely feel like there's been 2 or 3 times where it is implied that you were supposed to be able to stealth through a level, and then you just turn a corner and you immediately get detected, and then it just evolves into a firefight. There almost certainly is no way to play the game completely stealth. Like, just because it's not, the level design hasn't been polished well enough. But yeah, it seems like I just walked slightly to a corner, and some guard saw me as I was going through the only doorway to enter an area, and immediately it turned into a firefight with there just being no chance. And maybe that's why it has the option to restart at the last checkpoint, because that may just be the only way you really could stealth the whole game. Not that you really would want to stealth the whole game. There's been not that many boss fights. I've in 3 chapters of 8 or 9, I fought one really strong, like, sub-boss, and that's pretty much it. There was a secret I found in the game that was a recording, but it's all in German, and it desperately needs to just, like, translate to English. And so you sat there, it felt like a good 4 minutes listening to this recording, not being able to do anything at all. You walk away from it, it gets quieter. Just to potentially hear it in German and then read the subtitles. And that's probably the biggest unlockable Easter egg thing I've found. Whereas the rest of the game, you're finding notes that I'm not bothering to read. There really is no story happening in the game. It definitely feels like the Old Blood didn't have the same budget as the New Order. It definitely feels like maybe the Old Blood was even put on the shelf and then released a year after the New Order, because the New Order was better polished and a better game. I wouldn't be surprised if the Old Blood originally wasn't anything like the New Order, and didn't have robot soldiers and robot dogs and things like that. Which they, compared to the original Wolfenstein 3D, that they're overemphasizing that, because in the original Wolfenstein 3D, at least the first couple levels that most people would have played, you don't see any robot anything. You know, it's only the kind of almost myth of Mecha Hitler at the very end of Wolfenstein 3D, that you have a robotic person. The Old Blood and the New Order definitely change how things play compared to the old Wolfenstein 3D, which kind of only makes it more awkward when you find a place you can sleep in the Old Blood, and then you are playing the levels of the original Wolfenstein 3D, which is the sequel to another game called Wolfenstein that nobody remembers. But it's just very awkward to spend 30 minutes of an hour-long level playing in the dream sequence, Uh, and probably not worth doing. Fairly game breaking. I feel like what happened in the New Order, and it's been a while since I played the New Order, is that you could only play the first level of Wolfenstein 3D as kind of an Easter egg, and then when you expand that to like all the levels, that just gets a little crazy. It also kind of implies that there are only 9 levels of Wolfenstein 3D, which that doesn't seem like that would be right either. So yeah, it may be that they're hand-picking 9 levels. There might be only 9 levels in Wolfenstein 3D. As someone who, once again, only played the first level, I really don't know. But it is also a case that the point in the New Order when you could do the Easter egg and play Wolfenstein 3D is a falling action point in between levels. It's not directly in the middle of action, where this is definitely directly in the middle of action. I need to actually play here, don't I? Okay. Let's activate this. I'm playing on my phone, and that's distracting me. But I'm really struggling with some of the difficulty, and I'm already playing on the easiest of the difficulty settings in the Old Blood, and so I definitely have concern that I will not be able to actually beat the game. I should have put this over here. I don't think it's gonna matter, but if I am gonna have positional placement turned on, I should pay attention to that. I'm doing some setup for the Amazon Prime Day, which, yeah, inevitably, if I'm not careful, there will be a bunch of sales on Amazon Prime Day of things. Lightning deals in particular are the only things you really need to focus on, I think, but if I'm not careful, there's going to be a bunch of sales for things that are not at all really on the list of things I need, or they're going to be incredibly obscure things that I didn't really need to think about, didn't really need. Ideally, it would be a pretty decent outcome to go through those 2 days and buy very little. I am conflicted about buying a new tablet. I have a Samsung Tab A. They're up to a Tab 7, maybe even a Tab 8. So, like, mine is from 2016. Its screen flickers, but I use it very little anyway, so I almost feel like I should consider like not replacing it until the exact second it breaks. I do need to get a new phone in comparison, where the phone battery is totally shot. What's the difference there? The difference is almost certainly my cell phone is constantly being plugged in and charged, where my tablet gets charged once a week. The tablet batteries are much bigger, so potentially internal resistance takes a lot longer to increase, and it's the internal resistance as the chemicals break down that causes the batteries to get worse and worse. But yeah, So yeah, I definitely will, if when I get a new phone, consider being a lot more careful about how often it gets plugged in and charged. Like once a night, overnight to 100% would be the ideal scenario if you can actually live with that. But also on my phone, the screen is pretty burnt in because I have the brightness set pretty high. And I should turn it down a little bit. But yeah, I'm trying to think about moving into the Tuya Smart Life home automation ecosystem a little bit more. So, but a lot of that is probably a little premature because Matter is just around the corner, and Matter as a connective technology might be better, and there's no guarantee that any of it's going to be backward compatible. I probably should move into Zigbee. I have nothing Zigbee in my house at this point, but Zigbee probably is the better way. A single point of access as far as Zigbee, having a Zigbee gateway to then have that one device connect to the internet does create a bottleneck and a single point of failure as far as people hacking into things. But at a certain point your router is already doing that, so I don't think the security argument between having Wi-Fi devices connect to your Wi-Fi router versus having a Zigbee gateway connected to your Wi-Fi router matters that much as far as bottlenecking. But there is a much better argument that the 2.4 gigahertz on Wi-Fi is very much flooded with noise, and Zigbee at a different megahertz, different frequency, is going to be less flooded with noise, and I think the Zigbee standard is just new. Of course, there's also the Z-Wave standard, which I think pretty much everybody's abandoned. But yeah, I would really like to get everything into the same app, because at the moment I have like a bunch of different apps that could be certainly connected and interact a lot better, and that's where I think Tuya makes sense. I wouldn't really go with the Apple HomeKit. I really wouldn't go with the Google Home or Home Assistant or anything like that at the moment. Home Assistance maybe is the one that you would once again think about as far as Zigbee. But yeah, I'm thinking it might be time to finally pull the trigger on a door lock, deadbolt lock that's electric. The one I wanted to get is that has a video camera and a doorbell built into it, is a little too expensive and wouldn't interconnect with Tuya. Anyways, Tuya really has these home automation technologies. It has a giant leap forward because it's gadgets that have been done in Asia for a while, and so the Asians have already adopted it and tested it, and it's now just a case that there's a lot of manufacturers of devices that connect to the Tuya system, even if they're not directly made by Tuya. They just haven't really advertised themselves. When you're talking about home automation gadgets, looking towards the Asian countries is probably the right move. So yeah, I'm giving that some thought. And then there is actually very little otherwise that I'm thinking about buying as far as Amazon Prime Day. But I am already spending too much energy thinking about it. Do we have anything else to talk about as far as what I'm doing? Yeah, I'm still going through Amazon Plus originals, seeing if I like any of them. I'm watching the show S-E-E, about blind people. And I don't know if it's really worth it. I think what you have to do for that show, and I think it may be slowly getting better and better, but I think you have to kind of look at it like the show Into the Badlands, which I think Into the Badlands is a lot better than C, and assume that you're there for some interesting fight sequences, how blind people would fight each other over and over again, and then kind of ignore the vast majority of the rest of the series, which is where you would have the conversations and the politics and the drama. Just in the turn here. And then I'm watching Loot, which is just this woman is super rich but doesn't know what to do with her life and owns a foundation, a charitable foundation, and is hanging out with the people. It feels a lot like it's just trying to be The Office once again, or Community once again. Very much it feels like there's this formula that people try where it is, let's just have a bunch of people in an office, let's literally have the comedians that are writing the jokes be the actors so they can just improv on set. But yeah, and Loot again is about relationships. If anything, that is probably the connecting thread between all of the productions that Apple Plus has made as far as originals, is that they all seem to heavily focus around relationships. Ted Lasso being, I imagine, an early success to that, which that works in Ted Lasso very well, because it would fall apart, for me at least, if they focused on the actual soccer playing in Ted Lasso. Severance is also about relationships. So yeah, almost all of them are dramas. I'd have to go through the full list to see if there's anything that's like a comedy, that isn't a dramatic comedy, or there isn't anything that is just like an action or anything. I know they have some cartoons, so those might be comedies, but then the cartoons just get labeled as cartoons, so that really wouldn't count. Whereas you look at like Netflix and what they greenlight, and they're all over the place. And Netflix really benefits quite a bit by claiming a bunch of Korean shows that they've bought to be originals, because it just builds up their pedigree, even if it's not good content or content people really want to watch. it's something, where there's nothing as far as Apple Plus, and there's very little as far as Prime Video. The Prime Video procedure, the way the video originals of Prime Video made are tending to be the highest, most expensive, I imagine, quality shows like The Boys, and they've had great success doing that, and you'd almost assume that Apple would have tried to do the same thing, to say we're going to have big budget successes. And Prime Video started off very strong in that direction. The Man from High Castle, for instance, one of their very first series, and not a single budget, not a single penny was pinched, it looks like. I never actually got around to finishing The Man from High Castle. I think I watched the first season and then never watched anything more. And then Hulu, on the other hand, even their originals, that of which there's very few, are better than Apple Plus. So it does definitely feel like Apple is not really trying that hard, and it very well may just be that they don't care, because their intention was always just to sell Apple TV hardware, which, yeah, I put the Apple Plus app on a different Roku TV, a newer Roku TV, and it still has major stuttering issues. And then I looked into it, and they go, yeah, that's just how they program their network streaming technologies. It just stutters and doesn't buffer enough in the middle of the video. Like it'll stutter when that never happens on any other streaming app. And the only way to fix it is to go into settings and just say, give me the standard definition version of the files, and so you can't watch anything in HD, which is very noticeable that the quality is worse. But yeah, I'm talking way too much about TV when I should be talking about video games, so let's continue here. GameDeveloper.com has an article here. Heroes of the Storm won't be receiving any more major updates into the multiverse of sadness. Heroes of the Storm, when did it last get an update, would be my question. Let's see. 2020. So, at basically the beginning of the pandemic, they stopped supporting it. Heroes of the Storm was supposed to be a Dota 2 and League of Legends competitor. It was supposed to gain some fandom by bringing in the legacy fans of Blizzard characters. Unfortunately, it does make quite the assumption that the legacy fans of Blizzard were still even there. So I know playing Hearthstone, they tried to get me to play Heroes of the Storm, and I played it for maybe a day at most, and then gave up on it because I had no interest in it at all. It's just those Dota style games are not the kinds of games that somebody who was a Hearthstone player would likely want to play, although there may be a decent overlap. And this is one of those weird situations, certainly, where you can be optimistic and say, well, maybe this is the beginning of Activision Blizzard focusing in on products people actually care about, because I don't think too many people actually cared about Heroes of the Storm, and that they probably were just trying to get microtransaction income, or they were just chasing trends if there were no microtransactions in the game. I don't even know if there were. I think there were, but I would just be guessing. But this also could be a case where they are just continuing down a defeated path, and they're just canceling it out of desperation and a laziness to not support a game. I severely doubt that it would get brought back if the Microsoft Activision Blizzard acquisition goes through. So we're almost certainly that is the end of that. Let's see. Let's go and activate this. Special summon this. I should have probably put it there. And that should set us up somewhat nicely. And flip. And special summon. Let's see, was it this one first? Or we can just let him surrender. I will take a surrender and move on with my life. Certainly. Surrenders don't happen quite enough that it would hurt your ability to get daily quests done, so if people who are surrendering or disconnecting all the time to the point where you actually couldn't play the game, that would suck, but we're not quite to that. I need to really try and move faster in the first hour or two, because I am mostly focusing on playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And maybe that's working a little bit better where people are enjoying that more, but I don't know. RetroArch has this post introducing Mega Bezel Reflection Shader, which I think the idea here is that it looks like a curved tube TV effect and is actually, or it looks like the shadow box around the edge of a TV, and so you're seeing actual reflections of the actual screen to make it feel more realistic, which that's cool and all, I guess. Like, arguably you're not going to see something like that on you're gonna arguably you're not gonna see this on like a Raspberry Pi RetroPie setup, because it would probably just use too much GPU power. They're making the argument that by reflecting everything this way, it is helping you prevent like black pixel burn in otherwise, because this would just be black around the pixel. And you can see how this half-loaded crab creature gets reflected to look like a full one, and this tree in the background, or whatever this is, gets reflected to look like it's fully there. So it gives a kind of an optical illusion that there's actually more screen there than there actually is. here you have a kind of drastically different example where the only a very small portion is reflecting. At a certain level, though, this is, for some people, going to cross the line of being too realistic for no real benefit. But it's nice to have the feature there. There never was a case where you could play like Monkey Island, for instance, on an arcade machine that would have had a bezel. You could have played it on a computer monitor with a bezel, I suppose, but yeah. Personally, I would prefer for just pixel perfect presentation, and that is the default, and that is going to stay the default, so it's not really a big deal if they offer features. In a lot of ways, RetroArch is desperately trying to maintain relevancy and improve upon all that they've already done. They are very relevant, but it's going to get harder and harder as time goes by for them to have anything new to announce, as they have pretty much approached perfection. So, yeah. Set that there. Some mat here. I'm just going to go ahead and activate this as it stands here, so we can destroy this in the hopes that that would have gotten rid of this card. That did not work. Let's see. Just keep on activating effects. I feel like if there is a lifetime quest for acting effects, I'm probably very close to finishing that lifetime effect. This is going to be the point where we determine whether we've failed miserably or succeeded greatly. When we activate this effect to summon our next guy, will it activate his ability to banish a card? It should. And can we banish this card? We can. Alright. We have won. You might as well just concede now. Even if he clears the board, unless he gets rid of this trap, we are going to almost certainly win. Well, actually, I kind of want to get rid of this card so I can have space for 4. Otherwise, this is going to only let me summon 3. Apparently it's National Video Game Day, and so Gearbox officials put a picture here of a vault with a lot of their characters, although like this is like a Call of Duty reference and this is a Duke Nukem reference. So it almost feels like they're implying that they're going to put in the vault Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, which just came out, or Borderlands, which that would be weird. What does National Video Game Day really mean? Not really too much. It's kind of a pointless day that probably shouldn't be celebrated and shouldn't be mentioned. Give it up. I think it would be better if a lot of companies gave up celebrating these days. They really only exist for engagement in Twitter. Here you can see the ESA still has the pride flag with the new colors, which the new colors apparently are to add and include transgendered people, which I guess I need to count the number of different bands that were added and try and figure out what each specific band is supposed to represent, if each specific band is supposed to represent something. But yeah, I definitely hadn't heard anything about that, so I'm not paying much attention. It is either actual commitment, which you can believe it's actual commitment to leave up the Pride colors the 8 days after Pride Month, or it could be considered just a game of chicken that a lot of social media sites are doing because they don't want to be accused of immediately taking it down. Although in all fairness, Gearbox Official has taken down theirs, Larry Herb has taken down theirs. You can see of these other companies that engaged in National Video Game Day, none of them otherwise are still sporting the Pride colors. And at a certain point, there's maybe just a responsibility that needs to take place, where as part of celebrating Pride, if you're going to put up the Pride flag, you should also be a good Samaritan and take it down. In the same way that if you're going to put up a Christmas tree in December, you should take it down in January. Of course, there is also a danger here of looking at just a hashtag, because basically anything can be shown here. So Gunship Revolution here is showing off some somewhat lewd pictures of Soul Calibur and Darkstalkers characters, which the Capcom Fighting Collection that has Darkstalkers in it, one of those games had a kind of secret sexy ending where it was the 2 vampire girls from Darkstalkers. I think one of them's called Lilith. I don't remember the other one. Morgana, maybe. And so they are depicted. Now this is a pretty old game, so it's just a still image and it's just a pixel image. But the 2 vampire girls are depicted close to each other, embracing each other, naked. It's definitely lewd, to say the least, and Capcom is censoring it out and removing it for, I don't think, a good reason. particularly when you are making a historical collection of of games and re-releasing it, you would 100% expect that those games would not be changed, or if they were going to be changed, they would only be changed at a very minimal level to improve gameplay or improve the port. You wouldn't remove content. And I think that's just another example of the push towards censorship we keep on saying. Yeah, as I continue to scroll down a little bit further as far as National Video Game Museum, like National Video Game Day, there are basically two nobodies that are listed higher than YouTube creators is, which I don't want to be cruel and actually show them, but they're not very recognizable names, and that's a insult directed definitely at YouTube creators just being not considered relevant as a tweener celebrity. But yeah, I am definitely seeing a lot of people really having absolutely nothing to say around the holiday. Inherently, I think the problem there is that if you're going to have a holiday, there has to be some meaning behind the holiday, and there really is not any meaning around the holiday as it is. Like a National Video Game Day, there's no meaning to that. There's more meaning around something like May the 4th be with you, because at least that's the celebration of Star Wars. And it's a getting together in celebration of Star Wars fans amongst Star Wars fans. It is questionable how this is really going to turn out, but there's this GameIndustry.biz article, which we don't follow them much. Their parent company is working with the ESA to bring back E3. So the E3 is coming back, being run by ReedPop, which is the company that makes packs, EGX, Star Wars Celebration, New York Comic Con, and other events. Which inherently, I don't know anything about EGX, but almost certainly Star Wars Celebration is like Comic Con and PAX, where it is very, very much focused on end users, game players, fans, very little focus on any kind of industry inside experience. So E3 doesn't, from that group of events, feel like it's coming back as an E3, where it would be an actual trade show for tradespeople to actually do business and see early demos of games that could be buggy and not a good reflection of the final experience. What I think is it will come back as E3 in name only, and it will be very much like PAX, and I wouldn't even be surprised if it gets rebranded as a PAX Midwest or PAX Vegas eventually. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if you would maybe just call it E3 and then rename PAX as an E3 West. But yeah, it definitely does not feel like they have the experience to make trade shows. Does E3 need to stay a trade show? Not really. If anything, it's probably better if it does become like Comic-Con and fans go and see games that are really polished demos and often just lies about kind of just lies about what the final product is going to be. Yeah. At a certain level, there is an argument that E3 is antiquated because the idea of a small independent company having developed anything close to a finished product without having a publisher on board has long since gone out the window. Like, the game development process, if you're not a complete indie who's just self-funding, or you might be a AAA company that's self-funding too, but if you are seeking out a publisher to help fund your game, you will do that as a pitch with nothing else to really show. Maybe 4 or 5 pieces of concept art at most. And those pitch meetings, I don't think need to happen at E3, and I don't think they are going to happen at E3 anymore. So yeah, in a lot of ways, I'm not sure that ever really happened where somebody had a vertical slice of a game that was very polished and looked nice, and then they were seeking out publishers at E3. And if that's not what the goal of E3 was, then I don't know what the goal of E3 was, which is very possible that nobody really knew what the actual goal of E3 was. In a lot of ways, it's just an excuse to go to Vegas and get people drunk and schmooze. And as half of all stories around impropriety circle around something that happens around alcohol or Vegas, half of the problems are eliminated by not going to Vegas or not letting people go to Vegas and get drunk and hit on their coworkers. And mainstream video game journalists, of course, loved E3, but bribing mainstream video game journalists with a party at E3 is not paying. It's not profitable anymore. If anything, that's what I imagine the past 10 years of E3 have really been. Efforts, a decent way to bribe mainstream video game journalists with a good time, with alcohol. And then that creates the problem where video game journalists feel like they are friends with game developers, and game developers feel like they are friends with video game critics and mainstream video game journalists. And then both sides eventually have to realize that they can't be friends and they shouldn't be friends. That didn't work. Well, I'm hoping that this can recover. Alright. In the turn there. Let's see. Second Dinner has an IT job, IT manager job listing if you want to work for Second Dinner, although at a certain point I am following Second Dinner for no reason on Twitter, and I'm seeing their job listings more than I'm seeing other job listings. We kind of got away from talking about job listings because of the way my macro works, and we're focusing more on news, and that was the right decision, and I should take that decision to the next step and just mute Second Dinner. I don't really feel like there's a lot to say as far as my relationship to Second Dinner at this point, until they come out with some other kind of collectible card game that would actually interest me, because the Marvel Snap card game doesn't really interest me. Valve effectively has become a music soundtrack publisher more than a game developer in the past while, because they've been slowly putting out the Half-Life Alyx soundtrack. Point Extraction was the final chapter in that, I guess. And so now there's a 4-hour soundtrack now available for purchase on Steam, or stream it on Spotify or Apple Music. Meanwhile, the Portal Companion Collection came out on the Nintendo Switch, so they did publish a game relatively recently. The Steam Summer Sale, by the way, ended. I wasn't even really paying attention to when it was going to end. So, yeah. That ended. I didn't buy anything. I don't think that there's too much of a complaint to be made there, really. I will probably try to spend $200 in the winter sale. Arguably, the summer sale is the better sale to have spent some money, but it does kind of also feel like it feels like the summer sale is just kind of in an inopportune time to be spending money. It really is coming from a assumption that gamers are just not going to do anything else in the summer, and that they're just going to sit around and play video games all summer. And even if the temperature is particularly hot, I don't think you can make that assumption. We're working our way up the ranks. I think I've pretty much confirmed at this point that there is something about the way this What's on Steam website works, and I think that is probably that this website automatically updates and nobody has worked on it to increase the adult API tags. We are oddly getting some adult games, but when I actually look at the adult listings here, yeah, when you actually look at the adults only tag here, content is marked adults only, and then this is during the summer sale that I looked at this. And then you look at new and trending. There is this Secret Summer that came out July 5th that I didn't see. Kaiju Princess, I think I did see. Sword Bearer, July 4th, I didn't see. Honey Select Libido DX, June 2nd. I don't think I saw that. You can definitely see that there isn't a ton of these coming out. So maybe I am seeing everything, but as I go deeper and deeper back all the way to like January, either I've seen the more Western adult games and all of the Eastern adult games, or I have kind of just missed them. It definitely feels like I've missed some, though. Which puts me in a weird position, because on one hand, it does feel like they're being hidden. If I didn't see it, and I haven't been seeing it, even trying to see adult games using what's on Steam, yes, my method is bad, but there is no better method. There is no, like, new or trending website specifically just for all new games. I don't think. I guess that would be the question, though, is can I find on Steam? I would also throw out the allegation that the blue in the background might be one more shade lighter. It's interesting, they're still using the game's launches from the summer sale. Yeah. And there's no reason to do it. So, if I went to new releases here and click that, is there a way we could go to all new releases, see more all new releases here? Just look at how complicated this is. Yeah, I guess this is probably the better system, is that I need to go through this and stop using what's on Steam as my source. Oops, I just conceded. Just got ranked up and now I'm already screwed up here. Yeah. I need to rewrite the macro and go down this list. That is doable. It is going to create a nightmare scenario as far as DLC and soundtracks. But it does seem like you can get fairly low down this order. Yeah, we can see that, though, this is going to maybe need some tweaks. Because I would want to go back to like the 6th. It does seem like you can just keep on scrolling here. And it will just keep on doing this. Alright. So if we scroll really fast back up to the top. It's sorted by release date. Hide items in my wish list. Hide that. We could potentially narrow by language, and then it's only English, and then that means I could stop talking about Chinese and Russian games, which that would be a thought. I don't think I want to eliminate things that are just not single player, although that would be that. But we could say here only games, and I guess you could include hardware too, but maybe downloadable content. But I think you probably save yourself a lot of time if we just say only games. There. Only games would then create a list here of actual games. Here. And if we were going to go back until we saw something we'd already seen, let's see. This may open a lot more games. Maybe Madison. There. It's not too off. This really is a great example, though. Yeah, on one hand, you could say this is me just thinking out loud and rambling, but on the other hand, this is a great example of learning from your mistakes and realizing there is a better way to do this. Yeah, so I just need to reprogram it and eliminate what's on Steam as a middleman and just use this page. Yeah, July 5th is too much. Even these July 6 ones are too much. Okay. Alright, so I have over the weekend to work on that. And to start with, we won't filter out non-English speaking games, but in the future I could see filtering out things that don't support English. Moving on to video game news. Video Games Chronicle says the Halo veteran has joined 343 Industries as the studio technical design director. Paul Bertone worked on Halo 1 through 3, ODST, and Reach during his 12 years at Bungie, which 343 is the makers of I think what is that game? I've forgotten the name. It's a super popular game. No, 343 I think is the one that is still working on Halo, and Bungie moved over to work on the game Destiny, is the name of it. Destiny 2. So this is somebody being hired to come fix Halo, which which I'm sure Microsoft needs that. Let's see. Blizzard's boss has defended Diablo Immortal's microtransaction. The studio has also claimed that the vast majority of players aren't spending any money. While that is almost certainly true, that's always going to be true for any game full of microtransactions, and it doesn't make microtransactions acceptable because you're still having your experience affected and guided by the microtransactions. They're making the game more difficult. They're making the game try and push you to microtransactions. There's no such thing, and there's no way in which a game can be unaffected by in its design when microtransactions are added. I guess the real question here, though, is who specifically is saying this. This is Mike Ybarra, the Blizzard's president, not the CEO of Activision Blizzard. That way we can name and shame somebody spouting nonsense. Let's see, BlizzCon will return in 2023. Also, says Mike Ybarra, we are committed to bringing back BlizzCon in 2023. Well, you've shut down one game already, or announced that you're no longer supporting one game already, so yeah, you're quickly losing your audience. Activision Blizzard has been quickly losing their audience for years now, so I don't see a real reason why a BlizzCon coming back would feel that fun or feel like something that people would really want to do. It really feels like the only reason people were even going to BlizzCon for the past 3 or 4 years was expectations of free mounts or free gifts for buying the super expensive tickets or the super expensive digital tickets, which BlizzCon was the pioneer there of trying to get people to buy digital tickets to a live stream of BlizzCon. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says the NPD predicts Elden Ring will be 2022's best-selling U.S. game ahead of Call of Duty. Nintendo Switch is also forecast to lead annual hardware unit sales. Which, okay, that's both believable. The latest PlayStation 5 system update adds an auto low latency mode. Players can now choose whether to automatically switch to low latency mode. If you're using a TV that supports auto low latency mode, you can adjust the settings in screen and video output ALLM. This will give players more control when auto low latency mode is activated, but it will only work if the TV supports auto low latency mode. I've never heard of auto low latency mode, and it is a mouthful. Feels like it's very possibly something that only exists in Sony TVs, and it feels like it's just a G-Sync competitor that, as far as adaptive frame rate goes. Apparently, auto low latency mode has been available on the Xbox Series X since launch. It syncs the frame rate of the game users are playing to their monitor, which in theory reduces notable frame rate drops and other graphical issues. Only HDMI 2.1 compatible TVs currently support the feature. Yeah, it definitely feels like that is just a G-Sync competitor, but maybe that's the new name for a more generalized G-Sync. And then variable refresh rate also feels like that is the same thing as auto low latency mode, and at least that makes more sense in my mind as far as what what they're talking about. This is going to be somewhat of a tough trick to pull off, but we'll try the pattern when done correctly. Yep. This is really a good example again of a bad article, because they're talking about auto low latency mode, and then you get below this picture, and then they change the topic to talk about VRRR, the variable refresh rate. If a player turns off auto low latency mode, it won't activate while playing games, except for when the game supports variable refresh rate is being played. Which I guess maybe auto low latency mode is an attempt at simulating variable refresh rate in games that don't actually support variable refresh rate. So it might be two different technologies to try to accomplish very similar things. Moving on, Xbox has confirmed plans to attend Gamescom 2022. It will provide updates on some announced games coming to the Xbox in the next 12 months. It doesn't seem like they are planning on really announcing anything. And Gamescom being in Europe and Germany, I'm surprised that they are willing to go at this point, but it does... I don't know if there really are German-specific games or European-specific games that you would want to focus on. Yeah, like that you would want to announce. Like, yes, I know things like Tractor Simulator or Farming Simulator are fairly popular in Europe and not anywhere as popular in the United States, so maybe there's an argument around that game being announced, or a game like that being announced at Gamescom. I could think maybe some 4X games might be slightly more popular, or it might make some sense to announce those kinds of games at Gamescoms. But it does kind of feel like, since the pickings are already slim for the E3 season to announce games, why would you split announcements and put some in Gamescom? Although maybe that is the smarter move. I'm trying to play here and it's moving very slowly. Video Games Chronicles has the article here. Kazuki Takahashi, the creator of Yu-Gi-Oh!, has died at age 60. More than 50 Yu-Gi-Oh! Games have been released. That's really not a good thing, because honestly there's only probably about 5 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Games that are actually good. You can see Yu-Gi, and then you can see some of the characters from the later later anime series that I don't recognize. Apparently it was a snorkeling accident of all things, or maybe that is just a great way to kill somebody if you're going to wildly speculate. Like, sure, drown them and then put them in snorkeling gear and throw them 300 meters off the coast of Nago in the Okinawa prefecture. Some people say you should go out doing something you love, and I would guess I guess that's what happened there. He started working as a manga artist in 1982. Did not find widespread success until 1986 when he created the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga series for Weekly Shonen Jump magazine. Let's see. The final volume of Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga was published on April in 2004. And he wrote, "In my mind, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been completed, but throughout the world, many people are taking my work and the cards in their hands. In gratitude for that, I would like to prolong the world of Yu-Gi-Oh! For just a little while longer. I borrow the end of this book to thank all of those who participated in the world. Thank you from the bottom of my heart." So he hasn't written anything since 2004 anyways, and Yu-Gi-Oh's still wildly popular. It's a mean thing to say about someone who just died, but I'm not sure how much Kazuki Takahashi's how much of his influence really created the phenomenon around Yu-Gi-Oh. Just to be honest, like I think the anime creators just writing things out of their butt to make the anime and to make the cards work, and the production committees around all of that are probably more to be congratulated as far as the success of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the fandom. Because Yu-Gi-Oh! Inherently, whether you're talking about the manga or the first season of the anime or any season of the anime, inherently it's just a weird story. On the face of it, if there wasn't a card game around it, you would say there's no way that this is going to succeed. But yeah, he definitely had that first idea. In comparison, there are like the Cardcaptor Sakura Clear Card series did not gain any popularity as far as actually selling Clow cards or clear Clow cards or having any kind of card game around Cardcaptor Sakura. I guess that really just highlights how much has to succeed to make collectible card games work. Magic the Gathering succeeded greatly without having any manga or comic book or stories around it originally. Dungeons and Dragons, in a lot of ways, relied only on story and barely had anything else to sell. But yeah, if anything, it is always a good idea to better upsell people's contributions when they pass, or even before they're alive, while they're still alive. Aliving, what a word. Yeah, it doesn't really hurt to big up people and say, "Oh yeah, you really contributed. You were great. We couldn't have done it without you," even if it's not the truth. Being objective and critical is a pessimistic perspective that I, as a critic, have a natural talent towards. It is also something that nobody appreciates, and I really understand why. Honestly, if there was a scenario where my YouTube channel got big enough and I hired someone else and then it got way bigger, I would want to say that my contribution to a channel that became more collaborative would have been really big. But if I objectively looked at it, it probably won't be that big of a contribution. I definitely do see a scenario where if I could just hire and trust somebody, I would have them be the voice of my words or throw out their own voice, and I would take the step back and just be the guy in charge of doing the boring stuff. Doing the uploads, making sure the macro's still working, things like that. Alright, we're gonna put this over here. I'm just hoping that this works. If this doesn't work, I needed to have summoned this first. But it may be a case that it doesn't matter that this card. Let's see. This trap doesn't work. So I've either lost here, or this I can activate this trap and maybe finally banish this card. Are you gonna let me activate a trap? I guess not. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says God of War Ragnarok release date revealed, tops 1 million Instagram likes in less than a day. Fan reaction to the November release date announcement has been highly positive. You can definitely tell that there is a very hyped, very rabid fan base there, which I think definitely points more towards my theory that they should just have an announced date ready. I don't think it would be terrible if a year ago they had said that God of War Ragnarok has a tentative release date of no later than 2025. If they just said that was the no later, probably earlier release date, that might slowly bleed off anybody who's just going to be too rabid about the release date, while maintaining a decent amount of hype for everybody else. Of course, if their real goal, if the people who have been pushing the narrative that the fan base has been insulting and threatening and rude, if their goal is to continue to push that narrative, then they're going to say that they're still getting threats and people are being rude even after the announcement date. And sure, I'm sure they'll get a small number of that, and that they're gonna, I'm certain that they're just hyper focusing on those small numbers. But yeah, if their goal is to push that narrative, they will continue to push that narrative. If their goal is to just focus on releasing the game and hyping people up around the game, they would stop pushing that narrative, whether it's true or not, and just focus on the 1 million Instagram likes. And frankly, the creators of God of War Ragnarok should come out and say, thank you, we appreciate your fandom, we appreciate your feedback. It's nice to be loved, effectively. It did get it on the floor, on the ground at least, so I could just kill this guy if I can make it to the next turn. Assuming he can't kill this character. Of course, the question also comes down to whether Video Games Chronicle wants to push that narrative. Here they've written an article linking to a lot of different articles, kind of recapping everything. And then at the bottom here, they're talking about Ron Gilbert and Monkey Island, which has nothing to do with it. So I'd say that this is the chapter that's being added for Video Games Chronicle to push the narrative that all gamers are rabid and mean and abusive. Then see, yeah, it continues down this way. So up until this point, it seems like a decent recap, and then the article shifts its narrative and focus. And that is either because the narrative is being pushed by Barlog, one of the creators of God of War Ragnarok, or the narrative is being pushed by Video Games Chronicles. There is a bad attitude in a quote here that jumps out here. They are busting their ass. First of all, you're a professional and you're using ass, which is unprofessional, to make some you didn't even get thing out for you to enjoy, and then show some effing respect. So unprofessional again, and then demanding respect. Anytime anybody demands respect, that's a sign that they probably don't deserve respect. And because if you have to demand it, you didn't earn it. And anytime anybody's talking about respect, then that's a sign of somebody being probably entitled. Respect is really just a landmine term that the second you feel like you're being disrespected, the second you feel like you should be better respected, that's where you should evaluate and think about, are you, I got lucky there, evaluate and think about, are you thinking from a kind of objective perspective, or are you talking from more of an entitled emotional perspective? And then, yeah, all these accusations of being mistreated never get backed up, and I'll just say that once again. Like, as these articles just constantly push the narratives over and over again, they never add any new evidence. So maybe somebody said something nasty 2 weeks ago, and the article is still getting published. Maybe somebody said something nasty 2 months ago, and the articles are still getting published. Without a fresh influx of people being disrespectful, and it would have to be a lot of people, because this is the internet. It seems like somebody's just whining about the same thing over and over again. Moving on, Psychonauts 2 could be getting a boxed release in September. A physical edition of Double Fine's game have been listed on Amazon, which I guess they were already, I guess they were only digitally released. There's an update here saying it is getting an official box release in September. with the collectible Mother Lobe edition. So a little surprised it wasn't physically released in the first place. I guess maybe that was Microsoft or Double Fine's experiment in saying, well, this is kind of a experimental game and a niche game, so let's see if we could just sell it digitally only. Definitely it is a case that Microsoft wants to make all game sales digital only, and that way there's always a DRM and always the ability to take games away or stop supporting them and rip people off and make them buy the game again. And so that definitely is a bad precedent, because it does mean that there is a chance that if Activision Blizzard gets acquired, all their games eventually are going to try to be made digitally only, which for most Activision Blizzard games, a lot of them are digital only anyways. And we may see Bethesda games not come out in physical forms at some point in the distant future. We may see every company they acquire eventually stop putting out digital forms, and that would be very easy for Microsoft to do as a after the fact monopoly or triopoly of a publisher. It could be 2024, they say all of our games digital only, we are no longer making physical discs. Our new console doesn't have a disc drive, it's digital only. And at that point, who's to say Sony or Nintendo will be around to actually compete and say, we're still going to have discs and have the ability to trade games or resell games. GameStop is not doing particularly well, so if GameStop goes out of business, I think by de facto, all games might go digital only. Well, this is a nightmare. Speaking of digital only, PlayStation is removing purchased Studio Canal content from owners' video libraries. Germany and Australian users affected due to the evolving licensing agreements. So, yeah. Once again, this is a bit of evidence to show you don't own something when you buy it digitally. You don't own something until you physically have it in your hands, and even then, many laws try to argue that you don't own it even then to do whatever you want. Like when you have a DVD or Blu-ray, they argue you can't rip that and make a personal backup copy, and they call that piracy too, when that's not really piracy. And at some level, even if services like PlayStation just had the ability or the threat, even if it was completely illegal to do it, if the ability and threat existed to take away hundreds, thousands, potentially millions of dollars worth of content or entertainment from people, they are getting this leverage over you. Like, at what point 100 years down the line, I could foresee a future where Sony is telling you you have to vote a certain way, or we're going to take away your movies from you. You have to vote a certain way, or we're shutting down this service, would I imagine be the way they would phrase that. And it's not like we haven't heard things like that before. You see that in the TV and broadcast all the time, where it's like, call your local congressman and convince them to vote this way so that Dish or this cable company can not have to pay so much license fees to the small time, the small local stations. They're not really small. They're all owned by a major conglomerate, which is about to also, from what I hear, buy the CW, and thus the CW is going to not have as much money as it shifts from being kind of a cable cable channel that is yeah, it's going to shift from having the budget of an extended cable channel to having the budget of a local local TV channel. And yeah, if you think things like the Arrowverse and Flash, Batgirl, and all of that look a little cheap now, they almost certainly will look way cheaper if things like that can even continue to exist. I don't know if I have enough cards here to pull this off. Right. Interesting. So I could have selected the link material there. Gonna take a while. I can't target anything, can I? Well, that screwed me. That totally screwed me. I had a point there where that would have worked, and I messed it up. So my only hope now is that this would let me banish this. Yeah, I guess I don't really care too much about Austrian and German users losing Studio Canal content, but I imagine they care about that a lot more. Right, here we go. Actually, activate that effect too while we're at it. Hopefully that doesn't cancel this effect. Special summon that one. Then special summon that, and then that, and then that. activate that. And it doesn't work. Darn it. I am quickly running out of cards. Yeah, unless he can pull off some trick here. It doesn't feel like I'm gonna lose in this one turn, but I think he just pulled off enough of a trick. No, he needs to do about 200 more. Oh. Interesting. No damage at all. Two. Have anything else? 3 and 4. And we'll just keep on playing, and I'm going quiet here. This probably needs to be the last game for today, if we can get away with that. Interesting. Let's see. Video Games Chronicles has an article. Nintendo has revealed its most expensive Lego set yet, a $270 Bowser. Mighty Bowser has controllable movements and can interact with Lego Mario. I want to see this. I saw a little bit about this as an adult fan of Lego, but I've been very much unimpressed with the Nintendo Lego offerings so far. Let's go ahead and activate this. We gotta also play. I'm assuming that the two columns on the left and right cause it to shift back and forth, and maybe there's some buttons to that also. No, there's actually controls behind his shell. Yeah, you're really gonna want to see this. Alright, we will contemplate maybe playing a little bit more, but I don't think we'll leave it at that. Alright, so this is a weird looking guy I do not recognize, but I was thinking you would have grabbed these two pieces and those would have been the controllers, but it seems like the base is just a base, and then you tilt and pan on the inside, and it's very much like a puppet, and he shoots out a fireball if you raise his head high enough, I suspect. The problem here, I think, is that if you were going to get into the idea of like having a marionette puppet as a line of Lego series, is that you would have to build it this incredibly big with this many pieces, and that's gonna be $270, and that's just too expensive. I also don't know what other characters you would even begin to think about puppeting at that scale. I feel like it is also probably a misunderstanding on how many people really like Bowser as a character. I just don't think he is so incredibly popular that you would want him as your own, as a standalone character. You need a Princess Peach and a Mario at this same scale for this to make sense. And they're not offering that. What they're desperately trying to do here is have a level of play or playability around what is effectively just a stationary model, and so they probably worked very hard to make it puppeting because there's really nothing else you can do with it. And it comes with a little drawer where you can scan the digital Bluetooth Mario, which they're still trying to push that idea. They're also really trying to push the idea that Bowser should be way bigger than Mario in scale, which that is true in the games, but I think in model depictions you kind of want to keep them at the same scale. This is definitely not minifig scale, and this is not going to integrate into much of anything. I guess the general idea is that if you had a lot of the other Nintendo Super Mario Lego things, this would be the final boss guy, but there really isn't even that big of a platform for a final boss fight. It's really just a stand. So yeah, that would be hard to justify. Moving on, let's start burning through the news. Over 500 companies have registered for Gamescom 2022. So it does kind of sound like it's going to be a fairly big event, bigger than I think it has been in the past couple of years. We already talked about this, but PAX organizers ReedPop will be officially taking over E3, will reshape what didn't work. In a lot of ways, I guess this is just the ESA, though, firing everybody that was in charge of E3 and replacing them, outsourcing them. The Epic Game Store's next free title has been revealed. Wonder Boy and the Dragon's Trap will replace Killing Floor 2 and the Ancient Enemy, which is a fairly new game to be giving away for free, but that is often the case with Epic Games free games, although I still have yet to play a single game I've claimed, and I've claimed, I think, most of them. Psychonauts 2 is officially getting box release in September. We already heard that. Diablo Immortal Season 2 patch notes and Battle Pass details have been published. If you're interested in checking that out, read the Video Games Chronicle article. Let's see. Nacon has announced RoboCop Rogue City with the first gameplay trailer reveals, and saying that Peter Weller will reprise the role. The action game will be released in 2023. Peter Weller voicing RoboCop might not work as well as you think, because a lot of these people that voiced or played the characters decades previously have long since had problems with their voice. Like I saw Tim the Toolman Taylor, whatever his real name is, Tim Allen, recently, and like he was in this interview and he could barely string together a coherent sentence. He was just so old. So as for what this game looks like, well, at a certain level, this may be the cyberpunk that everybody wanted. I imagine this will be a smaller game, smaller in scope, smaller in ambition, and you will just play as a RoboCop character running around. There might be one like overall murder mystery type experience. You can see the big hair and the throwback to the 70s and 80s, which that's a smart move there. Giant microphone. But yeah, if you're really just gonna do a face scan for a brief cutscene and then put them in the helmet and then do just the voice acting, maybe Peter Weller can pull that off, maybe he won't. RoboCop as a concept works fine, like, because you can basically make any generic first-person shooter with regenerative health or lots of armor and make it a RoboCop game. And then Nacon is also making a survival game set in the Terminator universe. The open world game would be coming in the distant future, which a survival game in the Terminator universe almost certainly implies you're not playing as the Terminators, which I don't know why they haven't really tried playing as the Terminators. Because that would be an interesting twist for sure if you played as like a single T-800, T-1000, maybe. I think T-800 would be your best bet. That was isolated from all the other Terminators and was being hunted and attacked by the surviving humans, and instead of looking for food and water, you're looking for batteries and spare parts, trying to survive. But looking at this concept art, it definitely seems like you're probably playing as the humans. And it's almost certainly set in the future time frame, which is a better place, I think, to set a video game in the Terminator universe. And but I think it is also bad to set movies in the future time space. Moving on, Skull and Bones has been given a November release date. Check that out if you care. I've heard way too much about Skull and Bones at this point to really care about it. And then fans are unhappy after Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown trailer showed very little, which I guess this is the danger of having potentially a rabid fan base or a very expected fan base. I can definitely see how this trailer is a little artsy. They're not actually showing the cars, they're showing the silhouettes of cars with reflections of things. This definitely feels too much like a teaser trailer, even for an initial teaser trailer by video game standards. Ooh, do racers have special like back braces built into their suits? I wouldn't be surprised if that's real. That'd be a cool thing to get, as I sometimes have back problems. I don't know if I want to walk around in a racing suit though all the time, but I guess I could be walking around in a back brace anyways if I really had that big of an issue. Yeah, that trailer does not show anything, so I think there's fairly justified in being upset on that. There was not a single point where you saw a car racing on the road. You never saw an environment or road actually being rendered. Hopefully this game is not coming out anytime soon, and this is also from the same publisher, Nacon. So there's different expectations obviously, between announcing a survival Terminator game and showing very little, or showing a decent amount on the RoboCop game. But expectations are just different and possibly a little bit higher as far as what you want to visually see in a racing car game. Plus, it's probably not that hard to make racing car footage that is just a lie and not really based on what the game itself will look like. Moving on, Rockstar says the major Red Dead Online updates will stop as it focuses on GTA 6. I think we pretty much already talked about this, but I don't think too many people really cared or even wanted Red Dead Online to exist. They wanted Red Dead Redemption to be a better game, and there was no focus on that. So effectively, this is a story of Rockstar bringing Red Dead Redemption to existence just to then not focus on it to push people into Red Dead Online, to now, a couple years later, not focus on it and push people back to GTA 6 whenever that comes out, or GTA Online in the meantime. That feels very ADHD as far as how you run your business, or at least a lack of good strategy or planning. Pokemon Puzzle League is the next Nintendo 64 game coming to the Switch Online. Kids that are Pokemon fans these days are going to be incredibly satisfied as far as old Pokemon games and new Pokemon games coming out. Satisfied is probably the wrong word, though. I think most kids will just be overwhelmed with the number of Pokemon games, and they'll start picking and choosing. And older side games like Pokemon Puzzle League, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't sell particularly well as a spin-off. Pokemon Puzzle League as a concept, though, since it is just kind of a match 3 game, would have made a lot of sense for Nintendo or the Pokemon Company to make a mobile game and bring back Pokemon Puzzle League directly. Use that same title, same name, even if it was just a low effort port of the old game to mobile phones instead of bringing it to Nintendo Switch Online. That would make more sense for Puzzle League. They have a video here. Watch the 10 minutes of Clona Fantasy Reverie series on the PS5 if you want to check that out on Video Games Chronicles. Apex Legends Mobile Season 2 release date and new hero revealed. Okay. I don't really care about Apex Legends. Some of July's PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium games may have leaked, including Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate and Assassin's Creed games. I think we may have already talked about this too. Several Assassin's Creed games here. If anything, the only one that seems to be missing is Assassin's Creed 3, because it's the Ezio collection, which would be 2, 2.1, and 2.2 as it were. So they don't have Assassin's Creed 1, and they don't have Assassin's Creed 3, but then they have Black Flag and Unity, and then they have Freedom City and Rogue Remastered, which are side games. I need to get back to playing an Assassin's Creed game fairly quickly. Returnal's Steam listing continues to get updates ahead of a possible reveal. Achievements have been localized on the as yet unannounced port, which I guess that's just more evidence that it is coming to Steam. Several Skate 4 videos have leaked showing off Fun City and new features, which I'd almost suspect that this was a real photo that was just really blurry. Maybe Skate City will be the skating game that everybody is waiting for. This is a Skate 2, whereas Skate 4 is what they're talking about. Yeah, so Skate 4 is what I'm talking about. Fun City is apparently a level in Skate 4. There should probably be a game called Skate City, and I wouldn't be surprised if there is something by that name, but that's a different game, obviously. Final Fantasy VII Remake could have been in 2 parts rather than a trilogy. Square Enix explored the possibility of telling the story across 2 games, which, yeah, I'm sure anybody that makes a trilogy explores that possibility. That doesn't really feel like that's helpful or informative news. If that's supposed to imply that the trilogy will be fairly light on content in the 3rd part, or that the 2nd part will just be filler, I doubt that's really going to be the case for Final Fantasy VII Remake. It could be the case. There will be, of the 3 games, one that is best and one that is worst. It's not just going to be a tie, a 3-way tie. But I feel like, particularly when you're talking about Final Fantasy VII, which was, like all Final Fantasy games, an incredibly long game, remaking it and breaking it into 3 games probably is the right move for modern sensibilities, where we want slightly shorter games. We want 60-hour games, not 200-hour games. And Final Fantasy VII probably is closer to a 200-hour game. Moving on, Hitman's 3 new Ambrose Island map has been detailed with local reveal trailer, which this is an interesting looking character for the Hitman series. I kind of want to watch this, and I really don't have time to watch this. I wonder if Ambrose Island is going to be more of a drug trippy experience, or if it's supposed to be kind of a piratey experience. Yeah, it feels like it's basically a pirate island, and there's a real emphasis here around not Agent 47. So are you not playing as Agent 47 in this, or are they just highlighting the new bad guy? No, you are going to play as Agent 47. And if anything, I think that probably is just going to highlight where Agent 47's bald head is going to stand out even more, is on what looks like a pirate-run island. Let's see. Lord of the Rings Golem gameplay reveal trailers released. Story-driven action RPG hits PC and consoles later this year. This is Daedalic Entertainment that's publishing it, although it also seems like there's maybe a couple other companies that are publishing it in different regions. There has been a lot of waiting, certainly around Lord of the Rings Golem. It's been teased several years ago and then kind of went silent, and it is somewhat questionable whether it's the kind of game people even really want to play. Definitely looks like a stealth game. It definitely looks different than the way it was teased originally. It is hitting the notes of what I recognize from Lord of the Rings, but I would say Golem does not particularly look amazing. In a lot of ways, this feels a lot like that stealth game where you played as the Goblin. I think that was called Styx or something. Styx, STYX or something. Yeah. it's very possible that this is going to be too much stealth for people's desire and for going for a Lord of the Rings game or for any game. Moving on, we now are at the Gematsu articles. We had already talked about Bright Memory Infinite launching on consoles on July 21st. Cobra Kai 2 Dojo's Rising announced for basically everything due out in the fall. All we have is a single screenshot here, a title screen. But if there already was a Cobra Kai 1 Dojo's Rising, I imagine it would be very similar to that visually. Made in Abyss Binary Star Falling into Darkness game system trailer is now available if you want to check that out. A game called I suppose that's supposed to be Curate or Create. Probably Curate. They're going to announce a new title on July 14th. This is the publishing company. And here you can see there's a lot of boobage there being covered up. Potentially being covered up twice because it seems like there was an original drawing with some fabric here. And then there's more drawing with fabric here. Unless that's supposed to imply that the shirt is just folding up and ruffling. So, almost certainly a adult game, but I've never heard of Curate either, so they may be new to the business. Dragon Quest Treasures Japanese voice cast announced, if you want to check that out. I don't follow Japanese voice actors. Legend of Heroes Kuro no Kisekai 2 Crimson Sin details more of their characters, if you want to check that out. A lot of these Gematsu articles are starting to lose my attention at some level, and that is because I think I'm just getting overwhelmed with more news. Part of the problem, I think, is that when I built this macro in this system, I built it in a very dry spell time as far as video game news, and now as we're getting closer to Black Friday, as we're getting closer to Christmas, we're not anywhere close to it, but we're closer compared to January. We are starting to, with the E3 season and going forward, have more video game bits of news, and that is causing me to spend a lot of time reading a lot more news than I am really wanting to. A roguelike deck builder, Gwent Rogue Mage, is now available for PC, iOS, and Android. It does seem like it is a single player expansion to the already existing Gwent. It is standalone though, instead of being integrated into the original Gwent game. People liked Gwent in Witcher 3 for a brief time, but they have really doubled down and tripled down on a level of silliness in trying to make Gwent as a real world card game work, because it just, its concepts and the way it plays is just a little too weird and not popular enough. Now, one thing that could be happening here, and I could applaud CD Projekt Red if this is their trick, is they could be putting concept art and throwing out ideas for new monsters into Gwent to then reveal them in a Witcher 4 later on. So Gwent may be their test bed to test out new ideas. If that's the case, then fine, but it's probably not even a good test bed in that instance, because I don't think that many people are playing Gwent. Moving on, Asterix and Obelix XXXL, the RAM from Hibernia, has been announced for basically everything. Is this a remake of a previous game, because there was a remake of an Asterix and Obelix game about a year ago. Or is this a continuation? That would be really weird. And it's Microids that is bringing you back. So I don't know. I don't know if that's one of the good remakers or one of the bad remakers. This does kind of feel like it's a brand new game. It doesn't feel like a remake. Yeah. Nothing here says that this is a remake of any of the previous Asterix and Obelix games, so I have to assume that this is just a brand new game. It is still a case that people in the United States don't really know what Asterix and Obelix is, though. So I imagine it won't sell that well, in the United States at least. Moving on, Tate Multimedia has expanded into third-party publishing. They're already working on a series of unannounced projects. I've never heard of Tate Multimedia. They developed KO the Kangaroo. Okay. So, yeah. This might very well be another example of a developer deciding that they really don't have any ideas to make games, or they have too much money to make games, so they're going to become a third-party publisher to try and profit off of other people's work. Which, anytime you're profiting off of other people's work, you're probably making a mistake and not being innovative enough. The Famitsu software sales puts Monster Hunter Rise and Sunbreak in first place as a new game. And then you have to jump down to the 14th position before you have Eve Ghost Enemies as a new game. Nintendo Switch only holding the top 5 positions, being beat by the PlayStation 5 Gran Turismo 7, and then Nintendo Switch holding the rest until you get to the 14th position. So some of these smaller games like Vorterrarium or Eve Ghost Enemies for the Nintendo Switch, or F122, or Pelco Shooting Stars Alpha, all of these not selling particularly well. Hardware sales still massive for the Nintendo Switch, Switch and Switch Lite. Hardware sales pretty big for the PlayStation 5 this week at 20,000, so they must have had some in stock. But the Xbox Series X is holding fairly well at 9,000. Gone are the days, it seems like, in which we'll have only 50 Xboxes sold. There seems to be real competition here. 15 PlayStation 4s sold. Let's see. Legend of Heroes Kuro no Kisekai has even more stuff that they're highlighting. More gameplay videos, more characters. Check it out if you're interested. Core Crisis Final Fantasy VII Reunion details characters, story, enhancements, and battle system. This is, I don't believe, the newest Final Fantasy game that is in development. I don't think this is 16. This is more a remake of 13. Isn't that what it... Well, they're calling it Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion. But the characters I see here, I thought were from 13. I can't keep any of it in my head though, so I think the trick here is that this remaster is probably not going to be as big of a remaster or remake as the Final Fantasy VII remake is, but these characters from Crisis Core are going to play a bigger role than you would think in Final Fantasy VII's remake trilogy. And I think the goal here is to try and make everything feel like it's connected, and you have to play every one of these remake games at the least. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point they try to connect all the Final Fantasy universes together and convince people to play all the Final Fantasy games. But that would be quite the ask. There's probably about 20 games, all super long. Blade Assault is coming to the PS4, Xbox Series, PS5, Xbox One, and Switch on September 30th. I've not heard of this game before. Then Gamatsu says Sea of Stars adds a PS5 and PS4 version. This looks like a 8-bit Japanese RPG game. Doesn't look terrible, but still probably isn't something I would care to actually play. Koromon for the Switch launches July 21st. This is a Pokemon clone from the looks of it, which maybe that'll work, maybe that won't. Being on the Switch might hurt it. The Dark Side Pictures anthology, The Devil in Me, launches this fall. So they're still doing the Dark Side Pictures anthology. I guess the question is, will there ever be a point when they stop doing Dark Side Pictures anthology games? I'd say, I guess, when they stop selling enough to make sense. Because any slightly horrific Telltale style game that you could make, you could put under that banner if you are that publisher. And they could just stop making any games for a couple years and then bring it back and never officially cancel the anthology as a series. It's almost like a TV show. If somebody said they were going to make Star Trek The Next Generation Season 7 right now, nobody would be upset by that. It would be crazy, certainly. But if you could bring back all the characters and make them look like the Star Trek The Next Generation, the way they looked in The Next Generation, most people would probably be pretty happy with that, in the same way that the movies of Star Trek, the original series, made people very happy, because the movies for the original series came out many years after the original series had been canceled. We already talked about Psychonauts 2 Motherlobe Edition, Physical Edition. Doesn't really feel like there's much of a collectible here. It seems like you may get some stickers and maybe some what they call pencil board art, cardboard art coasters. I never really knew what you were supposed to do with the pencil board art. It felt like it was just a small poster that you would get in anime DVD collectible boxes mostly. Let's see, the Tomorrow Children Phoenix Edition launches September 6th. Is this the first time we've been given an actual date? The Tomorrow Children still is a very weird game, and I don't feel like this re-release is going to actually succeed. If anything, this is probably the biggest gamble that anybody has done, and it is probably only being done because the creators of the Tomorrow Children got the rights back to it, and they desperately are trying to make as much money as possible. I wouldn't be surprised if the creators and publishers of the Tomorrow Children, which I think now are the same people, I wouldn't be surprised if they put the game out on September 6th and by September 12th they announce their own bankruptcy, and that this was their last gasp to see if they could continue making money and continue as a business. Let's see, moving on, Curse to Golf adds a PS5 and PS4 version launching August 18th. Inscription is coming to the PS5 and PS4. which it's been PC exclusive up until this point. RoboCop Rogue City launches June 23rd for the PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. We already talked about that. Steel Rising Titans gameplay trailer is available. Is Steel Rising the one that's the puppet character? Yeah. It's the robotic puppets fighting other robotic puppets. It definitely feels like it might be more action than I would have thought at first. So kind of like a high action Dark Souls type game, maybe with a more wild story. It's gonna, I think, be somewhat similar to Nier Automata. And visually there might be an argument to say Nier Automata is what happens when a Japanese person wants to do something crazy and stylistic with the characters. You have a blindfolded girl in fancy lace dress, lingerie type outfits, and then Steel Rising is what you get when a Western or more Western company wants to make something iconic visually, and you get a robot puppet with a big poofy wig. Although that argument may fall completely apart, because I wouldn't be surprised if Steel Rising is also being made by a Japanese company. The company that's making it is Spiders, and Nacon is publishing it, so I'd have to see if we can. Spiders is a video game developer headquartered in Paris, France, and a subsidiary of Nacon. So yeah, Western French company making something like, visually making something like 2B in Nier Automata, and that would definitely explain the difference in visuals. Moving on, Ad Infinitum launches on April 20th, 2023 for basically everything. New gameplay trailer for a first-person survival horror game. It does look pretty horrific from that screenshot. Let's watch the blurred out video. Honestly, I wish the blur didn't work, but it does. Because if it didn't work, then I could just write it off and go, oh well, sometimes content ID claims are going to happen, and then there's nothing you can do about it. But I don't think I have gotten a content ID claim at all since I implemented the blur. Watching trailers, which aren't copyrightable in the first place, but whatever, people claim it regardless. Yeah, this Ad Infinitum looks like it might be something, although that trailer didn't really show me much. Let's go ahead and jump to the games on Steam. We have House Haunting. Looks like it's probably Chinese focused. Says it supports English, but yeah, it doesn't look that good. Grid Words. I don't understand how you would play this. So you see an arrow and you see like laugh. So is it just like Boggle, where you select things and then it gets replaced with new letters later? Or what? Laugh, and then they found play. Then they go to a different example here. Yeah, I don't quite understand how this is supposed to, how you're supposed to play this puzzle, but it doesn't matter. It looks like garbage anyways. Vowel movements here. Definitely seems like it's from the same people. Yep. So we're going to have this LH Games Limited flooding Steam with word games. Well, there was only 2 of them. We'll keep an eye out for that. This looks like a neon kind of physics ball rolling game, which we don't have a ton of physics ball rolling games that come out. It's been actually quite a long time since I've last seen one. But visually it's too much neon, too much flash. So I'm gonna have to say no. Hack Life Simulator. Looks like it's probably a management game. They're calling it a clicker, actually. Regardless, it doesn't look good enough. Dragon Forge here is already mostly negative, which is odd because this actually looks decent. So there's no microtransaction, it's just single player. Why do people hate it? It's basically a poor man's mobile app lacking microtransactions for a PC, costing $20. You create a dragon cool. You have a small story about how dragons were wiped off, how often you need to bring them back. Okay. I think I get the general gist of why it's not catching people's attention. There is a danger certainly around the idea, though, that games are going to start just being described as a mobile game lacking microtransactions, because what defines a mobile game in that sentence? It could be that there should be almost 100% possibility of overlap of mobile games and PC games. And just looking at this video, there's nothing here that just screams mobile game. It doesn't feel like you're tapping the screen, or that the inputs or the graphics have been compromised by a mobile platform. Regardless, though, I think that's enough negative feedback to say no to it. Cows Co. Looks like it's a game where you're trying to knock the cows into the fence. That doesn't seem like quite enough of a game. Dark Jungle here is blurry and green. A lot of the things I've been seeing today are blurry, and this shouldn't, the screenshots can't be blurred. Elemates. Yeah, there might be something to this. I'll give that a follow and do more research later. Deep Space Salvage Crew VR. Too much neon. Yuri Kill the Culmination Games has been super hyped, so that needs to be on the follow list. Plus, that needs to be spotlighted, I think. Alumni Escape Room Adventure. We'll put that on the follow, and we'll keep that to make a YouTube short on it. VR Chinese Kung Fu. Yeah, there might be something to this. I'll just put that one on the follow. I don't think I'm gonna make a YouTube short on VR games, though. Instant War. It's a real-time strategy game. Again, I'll give it a follow, but that's probably a no. Zombie Wave is obviously a no. Candy Girlfriend. Yeah, we have a game that is tagged sexual content, so let me just make sure it's YouTube family friendly in the screenshots, because a lot of these are not. So, yeah, you have anime girls in revealing clothes. It's a match 3 game. Doesn't seem like much more there. Now, we are back. We'll check that out to see if people like it. we are back to the same problem here, and it does kind of feel like these adult games, when they include anime girls instead of realistic 3D models, they do seem to arbitrarily always show up on a Friday, Saturday, or a Sunday of every other week, which that doesn't seem to be a coincidence. But I kind of at this point need to redo my macro and see how the releases really change, because this theory that I've been thinking was accurate with new evidence may not be so accurate. So I guess until I can reassure myself that my original synopsis was right, or find out that my original synopsis was wrong, I should stop repeating it or as a theory, because that seems like that's the way this needs to go. And then next we have this game called Cowboy Girl, which is just a kind of infinite shooter, which is an interesting concept where you get into different lanes to get bullets, and then the bullets maybe shoot automatically at the enemies. So it's kind of an infinite runner, but it doesn't actually depict you as running, and instead depicts you as shooting. Maybe you are actually controlling when it shoots. You can see this cowboy girl, which is, why not just call it a cowgirl at that point, is being depicted as somewhat scantily clad, although in the heat that's not crazy to dress like that. This is also English, Russian, and Chinese, so it obviously is a low effort game. It seems like it's either a low effort or Chinese or Russian game. Yeah, we have another Backrooms game, this one called Backrooms Beyond, which doesn't even feel like you are in the back rooms. There's not much, not even that many instances of what the back rooms usually are depicted as. But yeah, I think at this point, anything that has backroom in the name is going to be a no. Here we have a visual novel called Project Eternal Flame that also somehow claims to be a deck building game. Feels like it's probably Chinese. Yep, because there's a lot of text on the screen. Doesn't support English, so that's going to be a no. Scary Buddies doesn't look good enough. Multiplayer murder party game in VR. So werewolf in VR, basically. I could kind of see that idea, but then the idea of any kind of multiplayer game in VR is just crazy. That every player would have to have a VR headset. Cards of the Dreaming Dragons looks like it's an attempt at making a collectible card game. Tabletop game where you play with your friends and family. Oh, it's not a collectible card game so much as it is one of these very early tabletop games that don't have text. There's a game like this where it's just a bunch of pictures and you're supposed to just tell a story about the pictures, and then people give you points if you tell a good story. And that's what this is emulating. And it's free too, so I'm going to put it on the follow list. This is not that game, but it's same concept. And pretty easy game to make too. You can just get license some pre-made art and then put a tabletop game on top of it. Here we have a hidden object game, which we're just saying consistently no to hidden object games. Bookstore simulator with shelves upon shelves of the same books. which doesn't make any sense. So that's going to be a no. Here we've got what looks like a Chinese mobile game ported. Maybe even a Chinese tablet game ported. I don't think tablets are particularly that popular in China or Asian countries. Here we have a point-and-click adventure. Intruder in Antiquonia. There might be something to this. And it might be nothing to this because, you know, point-and-click adventures can obviously never become popular in the first place enough that people would review it, or they could become pretty bad experiences pretty easily. Here we've got cowboys playing checkers, which arguably you're narrowing your field of interest by having it be cowboy themed. Some people are just going to want to play checkers. Like a cowboy mode in a checkers game might make some sense. For $15 for checkers is also incredibly too high when you can get Tabletop Simulator for $10 on sale. Boss Hunter can't even make good videos. Looks like total garbage. Lost Dream Memories. It's probably just an asset flip game, but I'll give it a follow just in case it isn't. Tower Defender Hero Wars. Looks like nothing. Occupy White Walls. Game about building art galleries and building sandbox simulator. I can't help but assume that this is just an asset flip game. It's just all over the place and weird things randomly placed. Which at some point I wouldn't be surprised if you could just write a script to randomly place things and put out a different game. I'm going to put this on the follow list just because it's rated very positively. It's free to play, it doesn't have any microtransactions, it's apparently an MMO. So, yeah. There might be some element to this that I'm not getting. But on the face of it, it doesn't look like there's much of a game there, or any game there. And even if there is content there, how much of it is really being created by the creators of the game versus other players. I'll put this game, The Blight, on the fall list in case it turns out to be good. Classified Stories, Color Out of Space. I think I have to pretty much assume that this is not much of anything. They made a movie based on this Lovecraft novel, The Color Out of Space. Yeah, at a certain point, yeah, I need to ask myself, as far as free games, should I say go ahead and check this out now because it's free, or should I put it on the follow list and then wait until other people say it's good, then highlight it and say go and check it out because it's free? I think it's easier and better just to say go and check it out now because it's free. So I will say that if this looks interesting, go check it out. It's free. Midnight Memories first chapter. Probably an asset flip horror game. And I don't like chapterized games. Moon Phase Pass. It looks a little too weird for its own good as far as the color palette. A roguelike meeple placement game. I don't know what that means, though. Kind of feels like it's a tower defense game where you have only 6 spots. I'm gonna put that on the follow list though. Might be something to that. I don't think this is actually in English. Any English? Well, it says it's English only. Cantors Paranormies. They're comparing it to Inside, and I didn't even like Inside. Alien ship. I don't think there's a real game here, but I'm incapable of actually making decisions today, so let's just do this. Ater, the Abuser Escape. Looks like it's kind of a joke troll game more than anything. Maybe this is a deeply personal experience and not a joke game to the people that made it, but it doesn't look polished. Plus, that's a pretty like rough narrative line to be on, to escaping an abuser. That as something that hopefully not that many people actually can relate to, and even if you can relate to it, I don't think you want to play a game around such a negative experience. Floor is Lava here, just looks like a platform game. Aegis Descent. It's probably nothing, but I'll give it a follow just in case. They're calling it an action roguelike game. Roguelike vehicle shooter. It's been a long time since we've seen any vehicle shooter games succeed. Probably decades. Knights of Fate just looks like an 8-bit RPG. Beltrix looks like it is a factory game that's not quite visually polished enough. Exodemic is apparently a gravity assist defense game, shooter game. It's not visually polished enough, but there is a concept I think that might make some sense there. Going in orbits and shooting and seemingly being able to jump from one place. Although that does also feel like that would be fairly overwhelming to have to try and figure out, should I jump now or should I be shooting? Or do I shoot automatically or do I jump automatically? And it feels like the game gets very fast very quickly. Faster than you probably would want it. We have a game called Fabula Prologue, which, if this wasn't a prologue, this actually does have enough visual polish to look like a space top-down shooter that I'd actually be interested in. I guess I'll just wait until a non-prologue version of the game comes out instead of putting it on the follow list. Ballad of Radolf doesn't look like anything. Snack Hunter seems to be a family party game where you're, I assume, wandering around looking for snacks. You can play on the cell phone. Online player versus player. So it's a hide and seek type game, I think. Everybody's sitting on the couch looking at their own phones, though. It feels awkward. Maybe that is just the new generation of how new generations will play multiplayer games, but that does seem very weird. But I'm gonna say no to that. Then we have a game called The Meaning, which looks like it might be a decent horror game, or it might just be an average horror game. So we'll give it a follow. We have a game called Entry. We have 2 more games to look at. Entry looks like nothing. And then Spellslinger VR. I'll give it a follow. And then that's going to put me back to our Gametsu articles as we're trying to burn through this. 3 hours in. The turn-based strategy game Crown Wars, The Black Prince, has been announced for PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. We really don't have time to be looking at trailers. Particularly teaser trailers. Yeah, it looks like it is going to be an XCOM type positional placement strategy game. You know, I could probably make a rule of only watching gameplay trailers and not watching teaser trailers instead of just following my instincts. That would probably save me some time. Lord of the Rings Golem gameplay reveal trailer we already watched, but Gametsu has that article too. Let's see, a co-op action game, Gangs of Sherwood, has been announced for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. And Gangs of Sherwood, I assume, is going to be a reference to Robin Hood. That doesn't inherently mean that it will be set in the same time as, or same world as Robin Hood. Yeah. The actual game, as we see it here, looks very similar to any like Asian action MMO. And they've just gone with a different visual approach, which is nice, but I'm not sure if there's going to really be a narrative focus there to make me interested. A co-op open-world survival action game called The Paradise Project has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC, which seems to involve zombies. So you have figured out how to make zombies iron. Yep, it looks like it's an action game where you can brainwash and control zombies. Which that is a different concept, certainly. There might be something to that. Clash Artifacts of Chaos has been delayed to February 9th, 2023. I don't recognize this game at all. It looks weird. Roguelike action game Raven's Watch has been announced for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Which, again, let's check out the blurred out reveal trailer. Several characters that are in a top-down action hack and slash experience. I feel like what we're seeing here is a lot of announcements of games trying to get away from a potential Diablo 4 release or Diablo Immortal, or being inspired by an announcement of Diablo Immortal or Diablo 4. We already talked about the Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown trailer that people were unhappy with. We already talked about the Terminator survival game and looked at that. We already talked about Skull and Bones launching November 8th for Xbox, PC, Stadia, and Luna. I think we had already talked about Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It might be that Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion and Final 7 Rebirth are very different looking games, but I would suspect they should look very similar. We already talked about Pokemon Puzzle League being added July 15th in the West. Custom Robo and Custom Robo Volume 2 in Japan. Apparently are Japanese exclusive. I don't believe Pokemon Puzzle League is a reskin of Custom Robo. I don't think that's the case. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 has an overview trailer if you want to check that out on Gamatsu. Nexon's Project Magnum has been officially titled The First Descendant, and the PC beta test signups are now available. Which, this is the first I've heard of a Project Magnum, but I don't pay attention to project names. The Dialfield Chronicle has a release date trailer. It's due out September 22nd worldwide. This is one of these Square Enix games that looks a lot like a Final Fantasy game. Grim Grimoire once more has its 7th trailer. 7 trailers is about 6 too many, maybe 5 too many. And then we have more customization trailers for Alex Gear Aegis Concerto of Simulacrax, which they're getting too many trailers also. And then a free-to-play 3-team tactical first-person shooter called Alara Prime has been announced for PC, which, yeah, I suspect that will come and go. Tencent Games developing or publishing it, probably Level Infinite developing it, and Tencent publishing it would be my guess. Alright, and so then that is going to bring us to the GameDeveloper.com articles. We already talked about ESA partnering with Reed to E3 2023. I wouldn't be surprised also if they did it for 1 year and then they didn't do it the next year. Supercell has increased its stake in Space Ace Games with a $37 million investment, which, okay. Supercell, I think, is the Clash of Clans company, or Clash Royale company, maybe both. 343 Industry is restoring cut Halo content for modern day modders. Lost content from Halo Combat Evolve and Halo 2 is being restored for and by the modern day modding community. So, so the and by part there is the weird part. That they're claiming that they're partnering with the Halo maker communities to resurrect archived and dummied out Halo content from Halo Master Chief Collection on PC. Said content includes unused assets and assets created for the Mac exclusive version. It's questionable how much of that really matters to most people who are even playing Halo, and it's questionable how many people are playing Halo in the first place, in my opinion. GameStop did announce a 4-to-1 stock split, which I think would quadruple anybody's money that they had in GameStop. But then they've also laid off their chief financial officer and employees to pursue sustainable profitability. Game Informer, which is, I believe, owned by GameStop, seems to have laid off some of the writers at Game Informer also. So, in what a turn of events that I would only describe as amazing, it does seem like the GameStop bros buying into GameStop and GameStonks may very well have profited, but they're going to continuously push the idea of holding and hodling forever, whereas if you're making 4 times your money, you're doing a great job. Take that out and convert it to bonds, or cash it out and pay down debt. what this might be one of the rarest instances where somebody be doing something silly and memeing might actually benefit you. Although at a certain point, the same is true for like people that got in early on Bitcoin, people that got in on early on Ethereum, people that got in on early on NFTs. There's some small number of people that probably could have profited very well there. Let's see. GameDeveloper.com, gotta quote this to the right people, has yet another article. More developers are pushing back against player toxicity. Which, yeah, you can definitely see this is a narrative being pushed versus any actual facts being promoted. This article is an editorial for sure. They're not even specifically talking about any specific developer saying anything specifically. They're pushing an editorialized propaganda piece, as it were. Rockstar halting major Red Dead Online updates to focus on the next GTA Auto. We already talked about that. CCB Games is going to halt support for Eve Valkyrie later this year. The studio wants to focus its efforts on other, quote, Eve Universe titles, which I don't know what Eve Valkyrie specifically is. And honestly, I thought there was only Eve Online, and that was the only game they even had in development. And then Meta has dropped a Facebook account requirement for Quest VR hardware, which I feel like at some point you're still going to be required to have a Meta account. Instead, yeah, starting in August, it will be possible to create a new Meta account that can be used with the company's range of VR headsets. So really, this is more of them stopping the use of Facebook as a brand or connecting brand. They obviously were going to do that since they changed their company from being called Facebook to Meta. And then we've got some follow list cleanup to look here. This one needs more time. Super Robot Wars needs to go to the wish list. I am outvoted here, so we'll put that on the wish list, and I have to remember, still I have to press the control button to click on that. Super Retro Fighters. It's barely positive. Do I really want to play this? It's been in early access. You know what, I'll just think about it later. I didn't check if Super Robot Wars was in early access. This game can leave the follow list because it's got no relevancy, no reviews. Super Perils of Baking, I will give more time to. Everything here is going to be super something because it's alphabetical. Super Ninja Cat from 2019. I think the answer to this is no. Like, I'm just not that big of a fan of platformers in the first place, so finding a niche game that's popularly received but is a platformer doesn't actually interest me. Super Match, the ultimate matching game, has a poor review percentage, so that'll go. Even though that is the kind of game I would like to see. And then this game, probably should just say no to. Yeah, it's not going to get 29 more reviews in a couple of months. Super High Ball Pinball Platformer. I think we have to say no to this too, even though I do like pinball games. This doesn't really even feel like a pinball game. Super Ember Kaboom. needs more time. And Super Dungeon Maker. Is still early access. Good. PAX Rising Online. It's interesting that Steam would have an association with PAX, because PAX in the past I think has kind of been more focused on pushing people towards good old games. Right, let's see. Alice, the Spicy Horse games, by the way, still not relisted. So it's been a whole week. Since it's been a whole week, I will also say that my confidence is fairly high that the reinstall in OBS has fixed everything. I haven't seen any micro stuttering or mouse, not micro stuttering. I haven't had any crashes or the mouse lagging like it was before. I've also not seen any network problems, so that could still be my ISP, but it could have been that the drop frames literally were part of the bad install. That would kind of make sense that it was part of the bad install. I do want to, after playing all of Wolfenstein the Old Blood, I want to re-implement the NVIDIA noise filtering on the microphone. I've disabled that at the moment. It probably doesn't matter much, but I could see getting slightly cleaner audio being nice, and it probably not pushing the amount of CPU usage up. We're almost done with, well, we're 3/4 of the way done with 1,000 ranked duels. Special summoning monsters, we're almost done there. Activating, yeah, special summoning monsters is what I've been doing a lot with my current deck, so this will be done, I imagine, by this time next week. Activating trap cards, still making progress towards that. Monsters on your opponent's side of the field being destroyed. Special summoning monsters from the graveyard, we're making decent progress there, but it'll take us a while. Banishing opponents' cards, still got a lot to do there. Getting the diamond rank. Then some of these secret ones. Take control of your opponent's monsters. You need to do this 40 times. Gain life points. We need to do a lot more of that. I feel like more of these lifetime secret ones should unlock and should have unlocked. But yeah. Inflicting damage to ranked is the only one that's left. You don't even need to watch a spotlight game, which ideally that should always happen off screen. Let's open 10 packs here. And again, we're getting decent amounts of new cards. And really, I'm just clicking through these cards to show you more than I'm actually looking at them myself. Yep. But yeah, we're slowly expanding and definitely getting enough gems, and we're up to rank 90 now, which which means it's not even really worth it to click all the way over to this point to just show that we are almost done with the season pass, and we'll be done probably in less than, with 40 days to remain. Alright, I'm gonna just very quickly go through my Twitter feed on this Friday. I doubt that there's going to be a I doubt that there's going to be much of anything here to say, or any new news. YouTube creators, I guess I could throw this out here as something. Yeah, if you want to experiment with me to find out if YouTube creators has any clout at all on Twitter, you could. It's saying which creator inspired you to start a gaming channel, tag them below. So even if that's true or not, if you wanted to tag me at Rydo of all, I believe, on Twitter, yeah, at Rydo of all. If you wanted to tag me there and see if that got me any more followers on Twitter or more subscribers on YouTube. I really only care about subscribers on YouTube, but you can see this has been up for 5 minutes and there's 25 replies and 6 retweets and 43 hearts. So they really don't have much of a following on Twitter anyways. Apparently Subset Games is talking about Into the Breach being their first mobile release and why Netflix was the right choice for distribution. I don't know if Netflix really is a good choice of distribution from mobile games at all, because I've not heard of anybody actually playing any of the Netflix mobile games. It is a weird concept. Yeah, I'm just continuously scrolling down. Pinball FX is getting more remakes of old Williams games. Here's Bride of Pinbot, for instance. But I don't really know if you can get Pinball FX on Steam anymore, if it is really just an Epic Game exclusive now, because this was by Epic Game Store that was retweeting that, or tweeting it originally. You know, I haven't seen anything from the National Video Game Museum lately. Maybe that means they have nothing to say, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they were struggling, which would really, really suck as far as my plans if the National Video Game Museum went out of business. I don't think that would really happen, though. Let's see, Nickelodeon Kart Racers 3 Slime Speedway has been announced for basically everything, according to Komatsu. We'll talk about that, I guess, again on Monday. Yeah, the absolute worst case scenario is that the video game museum went out of business and then collectors would try to scoop up all of their collection and put it back into private collections where nobody would see it. And I imagine that's not what would happen. And I'm just scrolling down to parts that I've already seen, so we're already done today. I'm just wasting time at this point. Alright, well, it's been 3 hours and 25 minutes, another fairly long stream, starting a little late. That's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon. Or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.